Look, thank you very much for coming along. While there's been some incidents that I believe are deplorable and far from our values, and some disruptions that show people do not want to have real, healthy, honest debate, what this day has shown is a huge number of people who are hungry for real change of direction and want to see ACT at the centre of the next government in order that we can get the real change we need to fix our economy, to make our streets safe again, and to ensure that a kid born in New Zealand today is equally valued no matter who they are. In other words, the egalitarian Kiwi dream that New Zealand stands for, that all New Zealanders ultimately stand for, and make this place a country that we are all proud to be part of. Now, happy to take any questions.
What do you think it says about what's going on in our country that we are seeing protests like this, about the division in our country?
Oh, look, I'm so disappointed by that one person who really disrupted so much of what was otherwise a positive event. I think that led to further incidents, which I apologise for on behalf of whoever it was, and we will cooperate in trying to track down anyone that has offended or harmed anybody. But, you know, New Zealand needs some serious debate about the economy, about law and order, about where we're going as a country. And I think when people decide to shout down or push each other, all that does is makes it harder for people to have the discussion we need.
What responsibility do you take for any of the division in this country?
I don't take responsibility for the actions of other people that are wrong. The person that does something wrong, it's their responsibility. The ACT Party has relentlessly promoted the idea of universal human rights. I think it's incumbent on all of us to respect that that is a legitimate view.
Have you brought into the election campaign for the race debate, you achieved Hobson's speech, both left, right and centre. How much responsibility do you take for the division in this country?
I actually am responding to what people are saying to me on the street every day. If you believe that the ACT Party, promoting a vision of New Zealand where everybody has the same rights and duties quoted from the treaty, is somehow making us responsible for a division, then I think frankly that's unfair and it's insincere. And that's because the government has policies that divide people by race.
Can you give us some more detail on the 15,000 people who you're going to sack? Which departments are they going to come from and in what numbers?
The target is based on the number of people that we had in 2017, but if you give, for example, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, they've gone up from 3,500 to about 5,800 in just the last 5 years. If you look at the Ministry of Education, they've gone from 2,500 to over 4,000 in the last 6 years. So that gives you an idea of where some of those reductions might be. But equally, it's not always true that every new hire or every new position is wrong. The needs of government do change over time, so I wouldn't be too prescriptive by department at this point.
What happens to those people though when they lost their jobs? You're at a time of rising unemployment. You are then sending those people out to be unemployed and on welfare at a time when you're proposing a dramatic welfare system.
Well, that's actually not true at all. You know, every day in New Zealand, over 3,000 people leave a job and go to another one. So 15,000 people leaving the public service. That's about 5 days hiring. I also just make the point that we have been moving people around even within the public service at a considerable rate. On the other hand, we cannot afford to continue paying higher taxes, borrowing money and indebting future generations when we don't actually have the means to pay for it. And right now, businesses and households are being forced to do more with less every year, while government does less with more. We've got to flip that balance.
Why did you choose co-governance in the election campaign?
We've been talking about co-governance for over 2 years. My speech covered a wide range of issues. And we release a policy every 2 days. I think you're probably reading a bit more significance into the timing of that than perhaps you need to.
Do you really not think that your debate around co-governance should stop some of this animosity?
Not at all. The debate is there. People don't like government policies that divide them by race. ACT's contribution is to be mature, constructive, humanistic and say, well, this is what we believe the treaty says, how it can be interpreted to be inclusive and have a place for all.
Do you think that you're
Well, I actually, due to the lighting, couldn't see a lot of what was happening. So
you had a lot of police. media, and I think some account operators are also in. Is that acceptable?
Yeah. No, that's unacceptable, and I'm someone who, in public meetings up and down this country for many years, as you well know, has fielded questions critical of media and has tried to actually foster some respect and understanding of the challenges that media face. So I think, while I find those actions reprehensible if they're as you're reporting them to me, I think to try and then politicise those actions when it's actually a person that's done something wrong, and we should try and track them down.
There were several people. There was certain individuals who took it up on their using science and one individual. There were multiple people who were using their science to block media from covering what the protesters were saying and doing. So this isn't just a couple of people. This is commonly amongst people who are following.
Well, I think people using the signs to stop someone who's trying to interrupt a peaceful democratic meeting getting more coverage and being rewarded by being put on the news, I think they've got every right to do that.
They're disrupting media from doing their job.
Well, frankly,
acceptable?
I think if the person can come and interrupt our meeting by protesting like that, I think other people equally have the right to peacefully prevent them from succeeding in their goal of getting coverage on the news.
And so if you find the person responsible for the more kind of aggressive actions, what will you do to them? Will you kick them out of the party? Will they no longer be able to be a supporter? What's the point?
Yeah, if a person is found to have committed assault, that's a crime. First and foremost, it should be reported to the police. And second of all, if they were found to be guilty of that, then we would not want them to be in the ACT Party.
How does Tino apply to your treaty principles?
Well, we think self-determination is a critical value for all New Zealanders. I've always used the example of partnership schools, kurahoru, or charter schools as they're more widely known. That's tino rangatiratanga in action. It's self-determination. I suspect it's exactly what the chiefs had in mind on the treaty grounds at Waitangi in 1840. The idea that you would be able to continue to self-determine and run your villages, and as it happens with schools, the way that they envisaged at the time. So it really is a great example of tino rangatiratanga in action. Sorry. Yeah.
The way to turn a treasure into torture is to impose it on people by force. Have an example of Terreo being imposed on people by force.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Somebody recently got a very important government email. They didn't understand the subject line, they deleted it, and that had further consequences. I don't think that was necessary. I think government departments should be communicating in a way that is efficient and effective. So that would be an example right there.
What's your fiscal?
Today, you'll notice I've been quoting Today for about 2 years.
Just on your policy, which version of the treaty are you going to legislate around? The Te Reo version?
Yes, that's what the policy says, and that's what I've been, if you've been following along, I've actually been quoting the Te Reo version for years. So that's...
You're launching this policy today, David. It's come through the press release. We're just checking you're still on the same page. Cool.
I am.
Yeah.
What are your fiscal targets for the next 3 years?
Look, we showed in our alternative budget how we can reduce expenditure by around 9 billion. There'd be similar reductions in taxation. We think that is the right way forward. We believe that after the next couple of days, when we've done some more numbers based on the pre-fu numbers that came through, we'll be in a much better place.
Any closer to making a decision about the property tax?
Do you mean the bright line or the mortgage interest deductibility?
The foreign buyer tax.
Well, we believe that it would be better to actually allow foreign buyers and have the tax than not allow them at all. However, I think part of the difficulty with that debate is it's never really been intended as a revenue tool. That's how the Nats have tried to use it.
Does the ACT Party live in the real world?
Yes.
I only ask because a lot of your policies in terms of race relation, your approach, assumes the effects of colonisation are over. So is colonisation over?
Well, no, our party, putting aside I slightly questioning. Our policy assumes that each person is a human being with many attributes, and it doesn't make race the number one effect. Because for some people doing very well, thank you very much, the effects of colonisation are irrelevant. For others it is. But there are people who have actually found themselves disadvantaged for all kinds of reasons. So we would rather target people's disadvantage based on their disadvantage rather than lazily grouping people into an ethnic group.
David, how do you put yourself an ally? Would you call yourself an ally to trans community?
Yeah, I would.
How so?
I've always been a person who is tolerant and accepting of people from all backgrounds and all walks of life, and I've always worked on the basis that if a person is not harming me and I'm not harming them, then we should both be able to flourish in self-chosen ways. Yeah, that's right, because as you can see around the world, this is now a legitimate debate about is tolerance a two-way street. I think the fact that people are shouted down, aren't allowed to make basic questions, the fact that a group of women can't meet and have a discussion about women's rights at a public park in Auckland, that tells you that actually there does need to be some more debate.
Do you think you should adopt that for your own party?
I beg your pardon?
Do you think that maybe your own party should adopt it?
Yeah, and by and large we have. There's clearly been incidents we find unacceptable, but to try and politicise and mischaracterise the actions of a couple of people, I think frankly is irresponsible in itself. Well, if that's the case, I'd be very, very disappointed, but that's the first I've heard of it.
On scrapping the Māori Health Authority, they said that you wanted to replace it with a quite strong Māori health director inside the Ministry of Health. Do you agree, and if not, why?
Look, I think it's possible that such a directorate could be useful, but equally I think that the Ministry of Health should be prepared to help people from East Asian communities, South Asian communities connect with government services, and it might be that you ended up with directorates on that basis if it helped them connect with ethnically based service providers. I actually think it's probably not necessary, but you could see how within the structure of the Ministry of Health you might have something like that.
It doesn't really fit with your wanting to have no specific entity that.
No, but if it helped to contract service providers, then that could be quite useful.
And in your speech, you talked about potentially putting in legislation to limit the racial targeting that you speak of in the public service. What would that legislation look like?
It would simply require that the public service use good data based on actual disadvantage rather than lazily and frankly divisively dividing people by race.
With your public service accountability proposal, how would you ensure that that didn't cut across the constitutional obligation of ministers to be accountable to Parliament?
Sorry, could you just say that once more? Oh, well, they would be accountable to Parliament, but they would have the chief executive of their department would be accountable to them. At the moment, it's quite difficult for the minister to be accountable to Parliament because you're the minister of X portfolio, but the chief executive of your department's part of a whole of government approach where they're accountable to the public service chief, and there's no direct link to you. So I think it would increase accountability to Parliament.
But you've got every opportunity in select committees to question chief executives and to go right into the guts of every department.
Well, I agree that's true, but the question is, are they performing according to the contracted KPIs by the ministers? So you're bringing the minister's role of setting the goals and the chief executive's role of achieving the goals into focus.
Isn't this just an alternative to lazy MPs on select committees?
Well, I couldn't possibly comment. I think MPs on select committees do their very best. Look,
Demonising people and being not targeting them.
saying that you should actually have an obligation to seek help and treatment in order to receive money from the state. I think people might see that as an opportunity to get off dependence and get their life on track. I think it's a good idea.
Can you answer the question of what Wales did the other day in the time of debate? What do you think a mother that has a solo mother that has two kids might benefit is spending her money on other than the bare basics for her kids?
Well, there's been research in Australia where...
In New Zealand.
Yeah. Well, let me answer the question. Australian research that was involved bringing in a very similar policy found that there was less money spent on booze and cigarettes and more money spent on baby food and nappies. That's what the Australian research found.
Do you think right now, in the middle of a deep cost of living crisis, solo mothers will benefit by spending money on booze and ciggies or keeping their kids alive?
Well, if they're not, then what X proposing will make no difference. And the wraparound support and financial counselling that comes with electronic income management is actually going to be very important.
What kind of nanny state stuff is this?
You know what? You can actually get freedom to spend your own money by working for it. That's our basic core belief.
Well, why do you not accept them just to pick the house to them? You
can you see how New Zealand has figures that don't add up? We're borrowing too much, our productivity growth is in the tank, now we've got a government that does less and less with more and more, and people being asked to do more with less.
Why do you have to that so much?
Well, I think that's just an absurd question with the greatest of respect.
Can you answer Peter's question though? What are those people going to do if you're not going to give them welfare, if you're going to give them redundant?
Yeah. I suspect what you'll find every day in New Zealand, 3,000 people change jobs. So the idea that those people are not going to find a new job within a short period of time. Yeah, but if that's true, then there's going to be more people unemployed regardless. The question is, well, actually, if the government keeps borrowing money and spending on things that aren't productive, that actually reduces the amount of demand for resources in the rest of the economy and therefore the number of jobs. So, I think that's exactly the point, is that you're focused on 15,000 people that work for the government. I'm focused on the entire economy, and if it's the case that that employment is not efficient, then it's sucking up funds without producing stuff. There's less to buy, there's more money sloshing around, everybody's worse off. So actually, if you think about what we're trying to achieve here is more productivity, more meaningful jobs, more to buy at the shop. You do that by making sure that everybody's working as efficiently as possible, and if the government's employing people in inefficient ways, that's actually taking away from what we want.
Isn't it a bit tired to use beneficiary as a party as a political punching bag?
Well, that's not what we're doing. Yes.
You totally refute that.
I think frankly it's a little bit tired to ask the question that way. That's a bit disappointing. As we've said for a long time, our goal is that we want to have a policy-first approach to any coalition that we might become part of. We're not interested in having an arrangement where we go for the baubles of office and then worry about the policies later. But for the record, I think Nicole McKee would make a superb Minister of Justice.
What about the treaty principles? What about your treaty principles?
Those are an important priority for us, alongside the economy and law and order. Those are the three things I think ACT will be judged on in the future, for whether or not it's actually done a good job.
What do you make of Graham Hart giving 100,000 to New Zealand First, but nothing to you?
Well, first of all, that's untrue. He's given several $100,000 to New Zealand. I guess I'd say that he's free to give money to whoever he wants, but I'd be a bit worried that that last 100,000 sounds like a wasted vote.
Have you talked about this referendum pitch that you had with Luxon recent weeks in your talks with them?
No, not in recent weeks, but we have talked about it at the time.
Why not? I mean, this is something that he has ruled out before, and you are continuing to stand by and are confident that he will change his mind. So why would you not talk to him about it and try and change his mind before the election?
I think the answer is that we're not going to do our negotiations sort of through the media.
Well, you don't have to. I'm not asking whether you've done it through the media. I'm asking whether you've done it in your catch-ups that you have quite regularly.
Yeah, well, we do have regular catch-ups. We have discussed this issue in the past, and we will make this a priority in any post-election negotiation. But I just make the point, it's all very hypothetical. No one's even voted yet.
Have you costed a referendum?
No, we had a referendum for the End of Life Choice Act in cannabis. It's certainly something that costs in the low tens of millions. I've always said that democracy is something that is very worthwhile spending on.
How much do people pay for tickets to this?
It was actually free to come to the event today.
So those protesters
No, and we worked extensively to maintain security at this event. We got lists of people who'd been identified as trying to disrupt other parties' events. We worked very hard to match the emails to people that had previously been involved with ACT events or signing up to our emails to see if they might be people who were not really interested until they came to disrupt this event. So we've really done our best to make sure that it's secure.
Carl is pretty recognisable. How did you get through it?
Well, it's a very good question. I obviously would have hoped that it would have been. However, from where I was standing due to the lights, I certainly couldn't see it.
Would you be looking to investigate how we managed to get through or trying to boost up security for future events?
Yeah, I think we'll certainly be asking that question because, as you say, apparently it's a person who has a bit of form in this area. But there you go, it is what it is. Yeah, well, like I say, I was in a position where it was difficult for me to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand there's about 1,500 people there, so I'm not sure what that is as a percentage, but I thought we did pretty well.
How come you didn't charge when you charge for your attendance locally?
Campaign launch generally hasn't been charged for. Generally our AGM or conference is charged for. There's no special rhyme or reason to it, but that's how we've always done it.
That was free, why were there empty seats?
Beg your pardon?
It was free, why were there empty seats?
Because it's the biggest venue in Auckland as far as I'm aware. It's 2,500 seats. I think the number of people that came along to an ACT event was actually a record today, and we're really, really proud of that and what it means for this campaign.
Are you hoping ACT will bump up and support the next poll?
Oh, you hope that for every poll.
Are you sure that it will happen?
Well, no, I'm not Nostradamus, but I'm pretty confident that the support that we're getting shows that we're on a good track, and it's likely our polls will rise.
Do you accept you'll need a higher poll result to have this sort of muster at the negotiating table post-election?
I think every politician is seeking to get greater support. But I tell you what, folks, I think the questions are getting to the point where we need to move on. This is your last question? Yeah.
That opening you had smoke as a parent.
Yeah.
Was
I hadn't thought about that, but if it works for you, it works for me. Thank you very much, folks. Appreciate you coming, and I'm sorry if any of you are affected. Thank you very much.
Well done, mate.